Chosen one, I need you to hear this with your heart, not just your ears. Some of you have spent months asking God one painful question. Why did they treat me this way? You loved sincerely. You stood by people when no one else would. You prayed for them, encouraged them, protected their secrets, celebrated their victories, and remained loyal even when they gave you reasons to walk away. Yet they repaid your kindness with betrayal, disrespect, gossip, manipulation, and rejection. But today, God wants you to understand something powerful. What they did to you was not a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of what they failed to recognize. They were standing next to a blessing while chasing temporary pleasures. They traded something heaven had sent for something that only satisfied their pride. And now many of them are discovering the painful truth. They regret what they did because they finally realize that people like you are rare. They searched everywhere for another person with your heart, your loyalty, your honesty, and your compassion. But they couldn't find one. You were never ordinary. You were a gift from God, and they treated that gift like it was replaceable. The moment they lost access to your light, darkness became impossible to ignore. If you're hearing this today, don't let your heart be filled with revenge. Let it be filled with peace, because God has already begun revealing your value without you having to defend yourself. You see, betrayal has a strange way of exposing people's true character. While they thought they were hurting you, they were actually revealing themselves. They believed that removing you from their lives would make them happier, stronger, or more successful. Instead, they created a void that nothing else could fill. Some of them laughed while walking away from you. Some replaced you quickly, convinced they had upgraded. Some even tried to destroy your reputation to justify what they had done. But time has a way of uncovering truth. Masks eventually fall. Lies eventually collapse. Fake relationships eventually fade. And when the excitement disappeared, reality arrived. That's when they began remembering your loyalty. They remembered the peace you brought into every conversation. They remembered how you never competed with them, but always wanted them to win. They remembered that you forgave mistakes that others would never have tolerated. Suddenly, they realized that what they called weakness was actually strength. What they called ordinary was extraordinary. What they abandoned was exactly what they needed. Chosen one, don't miss this. Sometimes God allows people to lose you so they can understand your value, not because you need their validation, but because they need the lesson. The second thing you must understand is that your absence became louder than your presence ever was. Isn't that amazing? While you were there, they overlooked your sacrifices. They ignored your prayers. They took your kindness for granted because consistency often becomes invisible to those who lack gratitude. But once you stepped away, everything changed. Suddenly there was no one encouraging them the way you did. No one genuinely celebrating their victories. No one speaking life into their dreams. No one protecting them when others criticized them. They discovered that loyalty cannot be bought. Integrity cannot be copied. A pure heart cannot be manufactured. The people they chose over you often came with hidden motives, selfish agendas, jealousy, and deception. They thought they had found something better, but they only found temporary excitement hiding permanent disappointment. Meanwhile, God was quietly rebuilding your life. Every tear you cried became a seed for a greater harvest. Every sleepless night became preparation for greater peace. Every rejection became divine redirection. While they were losing themselves, you were finding yourself in God's presence. While they were chasing approval from the world, God was teaching you to depend only on Him. That's why your future looks different now. You survived what was meant to break you, and because of that, your confidence no longer comes from people's opinions. It comes from knowing whose child you are. Finally, I want every chosen one listening to stop mourning people who willingly walked away from your life. Stop asking why they couldn't appreciate you. Stop wishing they had treated you differently. Their inability to recognize your value does not reduce your value. A diamond remains a diamond, even if someone mistakes it for a rock. God never asked you to prove your worth to people committed to misunderstanding you. He asked you to remain faithful, loving, humble, and obedient. And that's exactly what you did. Today, many of those same people secretly wish they had made different choices. They wish they had protected the friendship instead of destroying it. They wish they had told the truth instead of spreading lies. They wish they had honored your loyalty instead of exploiting your kindness. They wish they had appreciated your presence before it became a memory. But regret is often the price people pay for taking God's blessings lightly. The beautiful part is that your story doesn't end with betrayal. It ends with restoration. God is bringing people into your life who will recognize your value immediately. They won't need to lose you before they appreciate you. They won't betray you to understand your heart. They will honor your presence because they recognize that blessings from God should never be treated carelessly. So lift your head high, chosen one. Keep walking with confidence. Keep praying with faith. Keep loving with wisdom. Keep trusting God's timing, because your greatest season is not behind you, it is ahead of you. The betrayal was not your ending. It was the doorway to your elevation. The tears were not your defeat. They were the evidence that your heart remained pure, while others allowed theirs to grow cold. And remember this every single day. You were never rejected because you lacked value. You were rejected because some people were too spiritually blind to recognize the blessing standing right in front of them. Now God is leading you toward people who will celebrate your presence instead of exploiting it. Protect your heart instead of breaking it, and thank Him every day for bringing someone as genuine as you into their lives. Your future is brighter than your past. Your purpose is greater than your pain. And the God who watched every betrayal is now preparing a reward that no enemy can steal. Keep believing, keep moving forward, and never forget, you are God's chosen, and what heaven has blessed, no betrayal can ever destroy. Chosen one, there is something many people never understand until it is too late, and perhaps this message was meant to remind you of that truth today. Some people don't recognize the value of a blessing while they are living with it every single day. They become so familiar with your kindness that they stop appreciating it. They become so accustomed to your loyalty that they assume it will always be there. They hear your encouraging words so often that they forget how rare genuine encouragement really is. They experience your patience, your forgiveness, your honesty, and your willingness to stand beside them through every storm. Yet instead of thanking God for placing someone like you in their life, they begin taking you for granted. If this has happened to you, don't think for one moment that it means you are not valuable. It simply means they lacked the wisdom to recognize a blessing before losing it. Many of you listening today know exactly what that feels like. You gave your best without expecting applause. You prayed for people who never prayed for you. You stayed loyal when everyone else was walking away. You celebrated their victories as though they were your own. You answered late-night calls when they were hurting. You defended them when others criticized them. You forgave mistakes that most people would never have forgiven. You carried burdens that were never yours to carry because your heart genuinely cared. But instead of receiving gratitude, you received betrayal. Instead of receiving loyalty, you were met with deception. Instead of receiving respect, you became the target of lies, gossip, rejection, or manipulation. It hurt deeply because you never imagined the people you loved could become the very people who wounded you. But hear this carefully. Their betrayal did not erase your value. It only revealed their blindness. A person who cannot recognize gold will treat it like ordinary metal. Someone who has never understood the worth of a diamond may step over it without giving it a second glance. Does the diamond lose its value because someone ignored it? Of course not. Its value remains exactly the same. The only thing exposed is the ignorance of the person who failed to recognize it. In the same way, your worth has never been determined by how people treated you. Your worth was established the moment God created you with purpose, gifted you with compassion, and called you according to his plan. Sometimes people become so distracted by pride, selfish ambition, jealousy, or temporary pleasures that they overlook the greatest blessings standing right in front of them. They chase excitement instead of peace. They choose popularity over loyalty. They choose people who flatter them instead of people who genuinely love them. They mistake noise for value and drama for excitement. In that moment, they convince themselves they are making the right decision. They believe walking away from you is no big loss. Some even laugh about it. Some believe they have found someone better. Others convince themselves that you were the problem all along, because admitting the truth would require them to confront their own actions. But time has a remarkable way of exposing reality. As the days pass, the excitement fades. The temporary relationships they chose begin to reveal their true colors. The people who once seemed perfect start showing selfish motives. The loyalty they expected disappears. The support they assumed would always be there suddenly vanishes. They begin experiencing the very betrayal they once caused someone else. That is often when memories begin returning. They remember how peaceful life felt when you were around. They remember how safe they felt talking to you. They remember your honesty in a world full of deception. They remember that you never competed with them, never secretly wished for their downfall, and never celebrated their failures. They realize that genuine people are incredibly rare. Unfortunately, by the time many people learn that lesson, the opportunity they once had is already gone. Have you ever noticed how people often appreciate clean water only when they become thirsty? They appreciate good health only after sickness arrives. They appreciate faithful friendships only after experiencing betrayal. Human nature has a tendency to overlook consistent blessings because they become familiar. That familiarity breeds carelessness, and carelessness often leads to regret. This is exactly what happens to many who betray a chosen one. While you were standing beside them, they assumed your presence was guaranteed. They believed they would always have access to your love, your prayers, your wisdom, and your encouragement. They forgot that every blessing entrusted by God carries responsibility. Blessings are meant to be cherished, not exploited. Chosen one, some of you have spent countless nights asking God why He allowed people to treat you this way. You questioned your worth. You wondered if you had done something wrong. You replayed conversations in your mind, searching for answers that never came. But today, God wants you to stop blaming yourself for someone else's inability to value what He entrusted to them. Not everyone has the spiritual maturity to recognize heaven's gifts. Some people only understand what they had after it has been removed from their lives. That realization becomes their greatest regret. What's even more amazing is that you never had to prove your value. You never had to argue with them or beg them to stay. God has a way of allowing time to become your witness. Without saying a word, your absence began speaking louder than your presence ever could. The peace you carried became noticeable only after it disappeared. The loyalty you offered became unforgettable once they experienced betrayal from others. The encouragement you gave became priceless after they encountered criticism instead. Little by little, they started comparing everyone they met to the person they once took for granted, and no comparison ever measured up. Do not mistake their regret for your assignment. Just because they finally recognize your value does not mean you are required to return to places where your heart was repeatedly broken. God sometimes allows regret to become a lesson for those who refuse to appreciate His blessings. Meanwhile, He leads His chosen ones toward greater purpose, healthier relationships, and people who can recognize genuine character without first having to lose it. So if your heart is still carrying the pain of betrayal, release the burden today. Stop wondering why they failed to appreciate you. The answer is simple. They were unable to recognize what God had placed before them. Your kindness was never weakness. Your loyalty was never foolishness. Your compassion was never something to be ashamed of. Those qualities are evidence of God's work within you. Never let someone else's poor choices convince you to become bitter. Continue to walk in love, but walk with wisdom. Continue to help others, but protect the peace God has given you. Continue to shine, because your light was never meant to depend on people's approval. One day, those who betrayed you may look back with deep regret, realizing they let go of one of the greatest blessings God ever placed in their lives. But by then, God will already have opened new doors for you, surrounded you with people who honor your heart, and led you into a season where your value is recognized instead of ignored. Remember this always, chosen one. What God has blessed cannot lose its worth simply because someone failed to appreciate it. Your value was established by heaven, and no betrayal on earth can ever take that away. Chosen one of the greatest mistakes your enemies made was believing that betrayal would be the end of your story. They thought that if they rejected you, talked behind your back, spread lies about you, or turned others against you, your spirit would be broken forever. They imagined you would never recover. They expected you to lose your confidence, your joy, and even your faith. But what they never understood is that when God has his hand upon someone's life, betrayal is never the final chapter. It becomes the beginning of divine preparation. What they intended for your destruction, God quietly transformed into the foundation of your elevation. That is why you are still standing today. You may have cried. You may have questioned everything. You may have felt abandoned for a season. But you were never forgotten. God was working behind the scenes, using every painful moment to prepare you for something far greater than you could imagine. There are seasons in life when God allows certain people to leave because they have already served their purpose. That doesn't mean the pain isn't real. It doesn't mean the betrayal doesn't hurt. It simply means that God sees what you cannot see. While you were asking, "Lord, why did this happen?" heaven was already asking, "How can this prepare my child for the next level?" Sometimes God cannot take you into your promised season while you are surrounded by people who secretly resent your calling. Some individuals are comfortable with you only as long as you stay small. They applaud you while you struggle. But the moment God begins lifting you higher, their hidden jealousy starts revealing itself. Instead of celebrating your growth, they criticize it. Instead of encouraging your dreams, they try to discourage them. Instead of praying for your success, they quietly hope you fail. God sees every hidden motive long before you do. Perhaps you wondered why relationships that seemed so strong suddenly collapsed. You thought they would always be there. You trusted their words because they smiled in your face. You believed their promises because they sounded sincere. But God knew what was hidden behind those smiles. He knew which conversations were taking place when you weren't around. He knew the envy they never admitted. He knew the plans they made without your knowledge. Sometimes, God's protection doesn't look like giving you everything you ask for. Sometimes, His protection looks like removing people before they can cause even greater damage. What felt like rejection was actually rescue. What looked like loss was actually divine protection. Think about how gold is refined. It is placed into intense fire, not because it has no value, but because it has great value. The fire removes every impurity until only pure gold remains. In the same way, God allowed you to walk through the fire of betrayal, disappointment, loneliness, and heartbreak, not to destroy you, but to refine you. During those lonely nights, you learned how to depend on God instead of people. During those painful seasons, your prayer life became stronger than ever before. You discovered that God's voice becomes much clearer when the voices of fake friends grow silent. The very pain that almost crushed you became the place where your faith grew deeper. You began trusting God in ways you never had before because there was no one else left to lean on. Have you noticed how different you are now? Before the betrayal, you trusted everyone too quickly. You ignored red flags because your heart always wanted to believe the best about people. You gave endless chances without setting healthy boundaries. You sacrificed your own peace, trying to keep everyone else happy. But after everything you've experienced, God has given you discernment. You now understand that not everyone who smiles at you is celebrating you. Not everyone who says, "I love you," truly has your best interests at heart. Wisdom has replaced naivety. Discernment has replaced blind trust. Strength has replaced fear. That transformation did not happen despite your pain. It happened because of it. The people who betrayed you thought they were taking something away from you. In reality, they were pushing you into God's presence. They unintentionally became instruments in God's plan. Every lie they told forced you to rely on God's truth. Every door they closed made room for a better one to open. Every rejection they caused redirected your path toward people who genuinely value your heart. Isn't it amazing how God can use even the worst intentions of others to accomplish His perfect purpose? Only God can take betrayal and turn it into wisdom. Only God can take rejection and turn it into redirection. Only God can take heartbreak and transform it into spiritual strength that no enemy can steal. While your enemies were busy watching your downfall, God was quietly rebuilding your life piece by piece. They thought your silence meant defeat, but your silence was actually the sound of God working. They assumed you had disappeared because you were weak, but heaven was preparing you in private. Many of God's greatest works happen away from public attention. Seeds grow beneath the soil before anyone sees the harvest. An eagle strengthens its wings before it rises above the storm. Likewise, God often prepares His chosen ones in hidden places before revealing the blessings He has already ordained for them. There were moments when you felt forgotten because nothing seemed to be changing. You prayed, yet answers appeared delayed. You cried, yet heaven seemed silent. But God's silence is never His absence. Sometimes He is working so deeply beneath the surface that you cannot yet see what He is building. Every delay carried purpose. Every closed door carried protection. Every painful goodbye was making space for a divinely appointed hello. Looking back, you may already realize that some of the things you begged God to restore were actually the very things He was protecting you from. The beautiful truth is that while those who betrayed you remain trapped in regret, bitterness, or the consequences of their own choices, God has been preparing a completely different future for you. Your peace is becoming stronger than your pain. Your confidence is no longer based on people's opinions, but on God's promises. Your identity is no longer tied to who accepted or rejected you, because you finally understand that your worth has always come from the one who created you. That realization is freedom. No longer do you need applause to feel valuable. No longer do you chase acceptance from people who never deserved your loyalty. You have learned that when God approves of your life, the opinions of others lose their power. So don't resent the season that broke your heart. It was also the season that built your character. Don't curse the betrayal that made you cry, because it also brought you closer to God than ever before. Every disappointment became a lesson. Every wound became a testimony. Every setback became preparation for a comeback that only God could orchestrate. One day, people will look at your life and wonder how you recovered so completely. They will never fully understand that your strength did not come from avoiding pain. It came from allowing God to transform that pain into purpose. Chosen one, your story was never meant to end in betrayal. It was always meant to continue into restoration, wisdom, favor, and divine elevation. The people who tried to stop your destiny only became part of the testimony that will inspire others. They believed they were writing your ending, but they were only turning the page to the chapter where God begins to display His power. Keep walking forward with confidence, because every painful step has been preparing you for a future that is far greater than your past. The betrayal was not your defeat. It was heaven's preparation for the incredible life God has been planning for you all along. Chosen one, this is the part of your journey where everything begins to change. For a long time, you focused on what was taken from you. You thought about the friendships that ended, the trust that was broken, the love that wasn't returned, and the opportunities that seemed to disappear because of someone else's betrayal. There were days when it felt as though your entire world had been shaken. You wondered if justice would ever come. You questioned whether the people who hurt you would ever understand the pain they caused. But today, God wants you to lift your eyes from the past and fix them on the future He is preparing. Your story is no longer about betrayal. It is about restoration. It is about a God who specializes in giving beauty for ashes, peace for anxiety, and hope where disappointment once lived. The chapter of loss is closing, and the chapter of restoration has already begun. One of the greatest traps the enemy wants to keep you in is the desire for revenge. He wants you to spend your days replaying painful memories. He wants bitterness to become your identity. He wants your heart to grow cold, so that your future becomes limited by your past. But that is not God's plan for His chosen ones. God never called you to carry the weight of revenge, because that burden was never yours to carry. While you have been praying, healing, and learning to trust Him again, God has been handling the things you could never control. He has seen every tear that fell when no one else was watching. He heard every silent prayer whispered in the middle of the night. He witnessed every lie that was spoken against you, every act of betrayal, every broken promise, and every moment when your heart felt completely crushed. Nothing escaped His attention. Even when it seemed as though people were getting away with what they had done, heaven was keeping a perfect record. God's justice may not always arrive on your timetable, but it always arrives at the right time. Many people believe that restoration simply means getting back what they lost. But God often works in a much greater way than that. His restoration is not about returning you to the life you had before the betrayal. It is about leading you into a life that is far better than the one you lost. Think about that for a moment. If someone stole an old seed from a farmer, but God later blessed that farmer with an entire harvest, would the farmer still mourn the missing seed? Of course not. The harvest would be so much greater than the original loss that the pain of yesterday would no longer define the future. This is exactly how God works. He doesn't merely replace what was taken from you. He multiplies it. He gives you wisdom where there was confusion. He gives you peace where there was chaos. He gives you stronger relationships where there was betrayal. He gives you greater purpose where there was once pain. Some of you are still holding on to people who have already let go of you. You keep hoping they will apologize. You keep waiting for them to admit they were wrong. You imagine how satisfying it would feel if they suddenly returned and confessed every mistake they made. But what if God is asking you to stop waiting for people to validate your worth? What if your healing begins the moment you stop expecting an apology from someone who may never be mature enough to give one? Chosen one, your peace should never depend on another person's ability to admit they were wrong. Your healing begins when you realize that God's opinion of you carries infinitely more weight than the opinions of those who misunderstood you. The beautiful thing about God's restoration is that He begins changing you before He changes your circumstances. Have you noticed how much stronger you have become? The situations that once would have broken you no longer have the same power. The criticism that once kept you awake at night no longer controls your emotions. The rejection that once shattered your confidence has become a reminder that your identity is found in Christ, not in people's approval. God has been restoring your mind, your heart, your confidence, and your faith long before you saw visible blessings appearing around you. That inner restoration is the greatest miracle, because once God heals your heart, no one can easily wound it again. As God restores you, He also begins removing the fear that betrayal left behind. Maybe you became afraid to trust again. Maybe you built emotional walls because you didn't want anyone else to hurt you. That's understandable. But remember this, wisdom is different from fear. God doesn't want you to live suspicious of everyone you meet. Instead, He wants you to walk with discernment. There is a difference. Discernment allows you to recognize healthy relationships without becoming vulnerable to manipulation. It helps you love people without losing yourself. It teaches you that not everyone who enters your life is sent to harm you. God is preparing divine connections, people who will appreciate your heart instead of exploiting it, encourage your calling instead of competing with it, and celebrate your victories instead of secretly resenting them. One day, you will look around and realize that the people surrounding you are completely different from those who once betrayed you. Instead of constant drama, there will be peace. Instead of manipulation, there will be honesty. Instead of jealousy, there will be genuine celebration. Instead of feeling emotionally exhausted, you will feel spiritually refreshed. These are the relationships God has been preparing all along. They won't require you to shrink your light to make others comfortable. They won't demand that you compromise your values to earn acceptance. They will recognize the gift God has placed inside you and thank Him for bringing your paths together. And what about those who betrayed you? Leave them in God's hands. Their greatest consequence is often realizing too late what they willingly threw away. Many will spend years searching for another person with your loyalty, your kindness, your integrity, and your genuine heart, only to discover that such people are rare. They will compare others to you and find that something is always missing. That realization becomes a lesson they cannot escape. But your assignment is not to watch their regret. Your assignment is to embrace your restoration. Don't waste the new season God has prepared by constantly looking back at the old one. Imagine standing at the doorway of a beautiful new home while refusing to enter because you're still staring at the ruins of the house that collapsed behind you. That is what many people do spiritually. God opens new doors, but they remain emotionally trapped in yesterday's pain. Chosen one, don't make that mistake. The future God has prepared deserves your full attention. There are blessings waiting that you have never imagined, opportunities that no betrayal can cancel, friendships that no lie can destroy, and favor that no enemy can block. What God is bringing into your life is not temporary, it is lasting because it comes from His hand. So today, choose to release the pain, release the bitterness, release the disappointment, release the need to prove your worth to people who never deserved your loyalty. Walk forward with confidence, knowing that God's restoration is already unfolding. Even if you cannot yet see every detail, trust that every closed door has made room for a better one. Believe that every tear has watered the soil for a greater harvest. Remember that every betrayal became a stepping stone toward your destiny. The same God who carried you through the darkest nights is now leading you into brighter days. Your heart will laugh again, your soul will rest again, your faith will grow stronger than ever before. The people who truly belong in your life will recognize your value from the very beginning, and they will treat you like the blessing God created you to be. This is your season to stop surviving and start flourishing. This is your season to stop mourning what was lost and start celebrating what God is restoring. Keep your eyes on Him, keep moving forward in faith, and never forget that no betrayal has the power to cancel the purpose God has written over your life. What heaven has planned for you is greater than anything the enemy tried to take away, and the restoration that is coming will be so complete that one day you will thank God not only for the blessings you received, but even for the betrayal that led you to them.